Welcome back to my channel, everybody. This is Mitchell again with Chicago White Sox fan card collector. Wanted to be able to just do my final sort of recap of the 2024 White Sox season. I had done two previous videos where I kind of talked about the team and just how much they were a disappointment and struggling throughout the season. In fact, I think my first one was back in April, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, I thought that they had the chance to be able to break the record set by the 1962 Mets, who were an expansion team. So it's pretty surprising that an established team was able to lose 121 games. And later on in the season, I think I did one when they were on a long losing streak. It was probably one of their 14 plus game losing streaks. They had 3 of them this season. But it's been a pretty rough season in all. Right now, I have the game on in the background here. They're playing the Tigers in the final game of a 3-game set to wrap up the season. If they win, they're actually going to win 5 of the last 6 games, which is probably their best bit of ball all season, and keeps them from losing more than just 121 games. And we're actually getting more wins than the 62 Mets by 2, but the Mets had 2 cancellations, so it is what it is. They have the loss record, even though they might have a slightly better winning percentage when you compare the two teams. So I wanted to kind of just do a recap of the season and kind of share my thoughts, but something came across today on our, if you're a fan of the team and you follow the team, you got this thing I'm going to share with you now. It's actually from a letter from the owner, the chairman, Jerry Reinsdorf, who claims to be above all things a baseball fan, and he wants the best for the White Sox. The Bulls, he approaches a little bit differently. He's a little more hands-off, but above and beyond anything else, he's a White Sox supporter, and he wants it best for the team, allegedly. So let's kind of go through his letter here as the owner. He's not said anything publicly in an interview. He's just released a statement a couple weeks ago and said he was going to be kind of releasing more information, or you'll hear more from him later in the season. So this actually came out as the game was starting today, which I thought was kind of a sneaky way of putting it out there. So he waited for the game to start. So if anybody who was watching it didn't notice that maybe it came across on their feed unless they went into it. And then secondarily, the Bears were actually in the third or fourth quarter at that point, and they were winning at that point. So people were probably distracted and probably wouldn't notice this, and probably wouldn't be people talking much about it until probably tomorrow when the season would be over. And the players and the coaches might not get a lot of questions about it because people just didn't catch it. So I thought I'd go through it. As I'm scrolling through it, it kind of talks a little bit about just the on-field performance obviously was a failure. And he said he took ownership. It was his responsibility, and there are no excuses. Okay, well, I'll hold comment till we go through the entire letter. And then he talks a little bit about the support that the team has been given by the fans throughout the year. And I will say that as the season went along, the front office did a lot to outreach to fans to try and get them to the ball game. I was at the game on Thursday, which was their final home game, and those tickets I was able to obtain for free. And I wasn't the only person that got free tickets from the White Sox. I think part of it was they were very worried about having completely empty stands on TV. Granted, what you didn't see, probably if you watched the game on television, is the whole upper deck was closed. I've never been at that ballpark where I've seen the entirety of the upper deck closed. So probably anybody who had bought an upper deck ticket got upgraded to go down to the lower level. And the lower level wasn't even full at that point. They said they had about 17,000 fans in attendance. I'd say it was probably more like 13 to 15,000, although I wasn't counting every single fan that came in there. But I think they were trying to acknowledge the fans' frustration as the season went along. And I don't know if that was, Jerry leading that, or if somebody encouraged him to do it after he was getting all the negative feedback about the team and their performance this season. So he kind of talks about them wanting to do much better and that their performance was unacceptable. And then he understood why the fans themselves were kind of getting frustrated. And then he kind of moved on to kind of talk a little bit about, the current roster and the general manager, Chris Getz, former player with us from the last decade. In his first year, they talked about the merits of him kind of leading 2 minor league clubs within our organization, one to a first place finish and one to reaching the final game of the season, where I think they could have won the league at that point. Okay. I'll save comments about that till the end too here. And then he said his most important decision coming up is going to be making a decision about the new manager for the ball club, which I do kind of agree is that's going to be a pretty important hire. It's going to be a very difficult hire too, because whoever's going to get that job knows they have a development project at play. They're not going to get an established manager that's ready to win and wants to win now in that position, which does narrow the search. And they've had a sort of a streak of trying to get some first-time managers in there over the course of the last decade or so. Tony La Russa excluding there. Yeah, he's excluded from that number. And it just, I don't know. It's like, it's not the established voice sometimes within the clubhouse that people are kind of looking up to, because it's somebody that they may not relate to. They may not feel has kind of earned the right to be in that position. So it's a real tough position, I think, for any new person coming in. I will say that our current interim manager, Grady Sizemore, does seem to have the voice of the players, which I think is the ear of the players. And I think that's a pretty important quality, and they probably should look at them. But unlike the Chris Getz hire, where they never looked outside of their organization, I think they do need to look at other people before they decide they want to bring Grady Sizemore back as the manager, if that's what they want to do. I think they need to be able to see what else is out there and not feel like they go with the easy route and promote from within. And anything, it just kind of includes him wanting to be he's a White Sox fan and a fan of baseball. As you know, his history is he's from New York, and his fandom goes with the Brooklyn Dodgers as a child and a young person, and then kind of like moved on into his business and later bought the White Sox in, I believe it was the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But he bought it from Bill Reck, or oh my God, I'm blanking on his name, but at the moment, but I definitely know who the name is. Bill Veck. Sorry about that. All right, so yeah, and he just kind of said it's the responsibility of him and everybody else in the organization to be able to try and work on getting better each and every day, and then kind of thank the fans for their support. So reactions to this, and I'll kind of go back and reference it a little bit too, but I'll take it off the screen. So above anything else, I'm a huge White Sox fan, as I think everybody knows. My whole channel is kind of named after that. And I've been a White Sox fan ever since my family moved up here into the Chicagoland area back in the early 80s. It's the team I embraced first, and I haven't really broken up with my first love, if you will. This year was close. I will say that. So I appreciate that he was able to kind of acknowledge the frustration of the fans. I think that maybe should have come much earlier on in the season, because this team was destined for a disaster very early on in the season. You could see it wasn't going to get better pretty much after like the second week of April. And he just was kind of quiet. I think if you were really kind of saying, this is not what I expected out of this organization, and I expect more from, as the leader, more from my organization and the players. A lot of people don't want the owners messing with the teams and just let the baseball people run the team, and I get that. But clearly the baseball people were struggling with the on-the-field product. Chris Getz, first-time general manager. Okay, I'm going to give him a little bit of a break here, but his background was player development, and that's where he spent most of his time and energy this offseason, was developing the players at the lower levels, of which we still don't have great hitters coming up through our ranks, but hopefully some guys actually work out, because that's really where we're hurting. But it's great that Birmingham had a good season. It's great that Kannapolis had a good season. Great. But you really kind of ignored the on-the-field product at the major league level, and it was never more obvious than it was this season. I think they were just kind of expecting it was going to be a mulligan season, right? And fans would still kind of come out because they loved seeing baseball and wanted to see the opponents, and that they'd understand that they're rebuilding, and they would be like a 50 to 60, maybe 70 win team out there. Frustrating nevertheless, but not enough where people were kind of like being as angry and disappointed as they are today, with them losing over 120 games and barely reaching 40 wins for the season. You saw that in the offseason, where they turned over the entirety of their pitching staff by the end of spring training, when they last moved Dylan Cease onward, and moved Michael Kopech to the bullpen, who they later got rid of as well. But also, like, some of the free agent signings that they brought in were not guys that were going to move the needle. Maybe they were good clubhouse guys, and they had a lot of problems in the clubhouse last year for sure. But it just kind of felt like they were placating us to us, placating that they're going to have a better clubhouse, placating they're going to have a better team out there today or this season. And once it started turning south pretty quickly, it didn't really feel like there was a lot of accountability throughout the organization. The players did what they could. I'm not necessarily blaming the players, and they definitely were pressing a lot at times. Some of the guys that you thought would hopefully be the guys that are keystones within your organization just weren't. Robert missed some time, came back, and just looks terrible at the plate. He does. He had a decent season last year. I think he's kind of showed what his potential is, but went into all kinds of bad habits again. Was chasing balls out of the zone and was striking out a lot. Wasn't walking again. Probably trying to press a little bit, sure, but it was horrendous. This is not the guy that's going to be your keystone player within the organization. So he played so badly so that I think nobody was willing to be able to pick him up when they were talking about trying to trade him. So that Johan Mercado being out pretty much the whole season, again, was a disappointment. Eloy Jimenez was ineffective when he was with the Sox and was also injured again. And he got moved on, obviously, surprisingly, in a trade that somebody wanted him. And then he got demoted later on before the end of the season, so he won't be on the postseason roster for Boston. Or I'm sorry, for Baltimore. So just a lot of little mistakes kind of like that with like if Chris Getz was supposed to be like their player development guy, these are guys that some of these guys were developed in the organization while he was still kind of a coach within there or like a front office guy there. It doesn't all fall on him at that point because he certainly wasn't the man in charge. Some of that was still Ron and Kenny, the previous team that was running the team, or the previous group that was running the team. But those are the guys they really needed to step up, and they couldn't even get on the field. And when they did get on the field, they were hugely ineffective and didn't really seem to be strong leaders for what they really kind of needed to be able to turn things around. And the guys that they brought in just kind of felt like they were bidding a position that was open. Guys that weren't starting with other teams anymore because they were ineffective. I think they were trying to catch magic in a bottle, hoping that like a Paul DeYoung would have a breakout season, and he actually did okay. But now he's on the bench with Kansas City, and he'll be in the playoffs, but he's a backup. So many of these players that were on the roster this year, if they remain to be Major League Baseball players, they're going to be backups. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great career, but they're not starters. And some of our starters just were like the worst part of what those three outcome hitters are. Three outcomes being, are you going to get a home run? Are you going to get a walk? Or strike out. Well, they did strike out much more than any of those other two outcomes. They weren't good contact hitters. They weren't able to get the ball in play. That's what the White Sox really need, is guys that can get the ball into play and can get extra base hits too, because a lot of the guys are getting balls in play just for hitting singles. So I think the majority of our hits were singles, which probably is true for most teams, but I imagine our percentage is even much higher if you compare it to like other teams that were able to hit home runs, get doubles and triples, etc. So there was that. And then mid-season, all this talk about trying to trade Garrett Crochet, and even the media was getting on saying that they needed to be able to do this. And I was just like the whole time, like, why? He's got a couple more years before they would have to really worry about either resigning him or trying to get rid of him. I know his market value was never going to be higher than it was maybe now, but he never pitched a full season for them as a starter. So like they probably were not going to be able to get as much as they could if they waited a season and see how he did for the entirety of the season. He was also your best pitcher, and he had sort of that kind of Chris Sale kind of excitement. I think that we liked as a White Sox fans from like 10, 15 years ago when he took the mound. And why not? He could be part of your team kind of growing up here. He's still relatively a young pitcher, and he could be your ace just in a couple, maybe even next season, for them. And would go a long way, I think, knowing like maybe every fifth day you got somebody that's going to be able to shut down the opponent and give you a chance to win. They didn't really have that in their rotation this year. They did briefly with Fetty, who was like they reclaimed him and he was able to kind of develop into a decent pitcher again. But, he wasn't going to be destined to be that stopper that they really needed in their rotation. But this guy Crochet was going to be it. So it just kind of felt like, why are you doing this? To get more prospects within your organization, which I disagree that they need some of those things to be able to compete again in the future. But again, sacrificing the team that's on the major league level. They just kind of kept taking pieces away. Granted, I don't think like they needed like, a Paul DeYoung, going back to him as an example, or Tommy Pham in their organization to be able to be successful in 2 or 3 years. And we had no use of them in the rest of the season, obviously, if we're going to just be bad. But they scaled it down. They stripped it so bad that they just went on this major tear of losing for the second half of the season until they changed the voice at the manager's position. And how could you blame the players? How could you feel like you just were just not given the resources you needed to be able to win as a team, and just disappointed to see all these guys keep leaving your clubhouse that were kind of your clubhouse leaders? And knowing that you're like close and on pace to be able to break the all-time loss record, and just see people that could help you win taken away from the team by management because they need prospects for the future. But like, how do you feel right now as a player? Like, I'm trying to win today. I'm trying to win today so we're not the most embarrassing team record-wise in Major League Baseball history. So as the season went along, I think a lot of the fans started enjoying and liking the players a lot more because they knew they were in a no-win situation. And it just felt completely unsupported by the management. Why are we talking more about the Birmingham Barons, which are a Double-A team, than the team that's on the field, of your leadership? So they just kind of glossed over it until it became such a problem that they had to talk about it, just like this letter from Jerry Reinsdorf right now. So that's about the end of what I wanted to kind of like just kind of say is like, we're really frustrated as a fandom here. And, I think the fandom loves this team 100%. When they win, we're out there. Even when they're not winning, we're following in some ways, whether it's like watching it on TV or listening on the radio or going to games when we can. And we just felt like we were taken for granted. Like we would keep coming back because, like we were in with their plan of rebuilding, and we weren't. We wanted to be able to see a team that wanted to be able to start winning and competing now. And there were so many games this season that they were just not competitive. It didn't feel like they had a chance before even the first pitch was thrown. And just the ownership didn't seem to care at that point. Maybe they did behind closed doors, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not privy to that. But it just felt like they gave up on the fans, and they gave up on the players on the field, most importantly. And that's going to hurt when you're trying to find free agents in the future. So I hope the White Sox are able to kind of figure this out. They hope find a manager that people want to play for, and that they're going to be patient with, and is good with player development, and hopefully is a good recruiter when they're starting to be able to try and bring people in free agency. Because it's not going to be one fix to be able to fix this team overnight. It's going to be having to bring people from into the organization, develop people that are actually already at the major league level with the team, and bringing in the right free agents for the team. I don't know Chris Getz well enough as a general manager. I don't know him at all, actually, but I don't know if he know him well enough he's going to be able to do that. But I hope he's talking to the right guys. I hope he's got like a Theo Epstein on speed dial or something like that to kind of talk about what that's like to be able to do this, because it's not easy. And so in the meantime, like, I hope Jerry can think about more about his current teams, current rosters, current players, and try to be a little bit more cognizant of what they need and be a little bit more supportive, as opposed to potentially threatening to move the team again if they don't get the funding to be able to build a new ballpark. There's nothing wrong with the current ballpark. If you ask me, is it Camden Yards? No, but it's certainly far from a bad baseball experience, and there's plenty of parking, and it's pretty accessible from wherever in Chicagoland. So yeah, that's my final rant. And then I'll just want to let you know before I wrap this up, I finally narrowed down my stack of cards to do my final SGC submission for the Topps Chrome special while it's still going on. I'm going to put it out probably this tomorrow. I'm going to try and pack it up tonight. And when I get to the post office tomorrow, I'm going to drop it off. And I just want to show the cards that made the final cut. Feel free to, if you've watched my videos recently, you've seen all these cards, but you maybe didn't know which ones I'm going to actually like settle on selecting. But you've seen these cards, so you can feel free to just kind of turn it off if you want to. But if you want to stick around for the cards, here you go. So they're in order by years of their release years. So I'm going to start with cards from the early 2000s and go into cards that have just been released as recently as 2023. All right, so the first one is a Heritage Chrome. This is Frank Thomas. This is actually the first year they did the refractors, but it's not a refractor on that part. Here's the X-Fractor of Ozzie Guillen. This was an uncirculated card. It came on top of the box of the hobby boxes. This was from the Traded Ups, I think it was called Update series, I think maybe at that point, or Trade, I can't remember. But interesting thing to this card is it's numbered out 20, and the serial number is 13, which was his uniform number. That's pretty cool. I think I have that one. Another Heritage Chrome of Albert Pujols. Not the refractor. Derek Jeter. Another Heritage Chrome. I did check ahead to see if they would take Heritage Chrome, because I wasn't sure, because it wasn't on the list, but they said that was okay. Then we got the first year they did purple. I got the Albert Pujols, because I think just looks really cool. I don't have a lot of purple cards. I know they're pretty common, but I like the first couple of years they did them. Here is the 2016, based on the 67 design. That's just the chrome. We got our Sapphire from 2016, made for the 65th anniversary of Topps. 2017. Here we got 2018 Topps Heritage Chrome of Ichiro. Yep, we got a Marlins card in this order. We got 2018 Sapphire, Albert Pujols. Sweet. My only soccer card in the order is one of my favorite Chelsea players. This is Eden Hazard. He's retired now. It's a purple refractor numbered out of 250. And we got now some 2019 Topps Heritage Chrome. Here's the purple. I think this is the best year of the purple, honestly. I love the choice to not make it that dark purple, but this real like lavender kind of purple. It's really cool. I got my only Jose Abreu they decided to submit, which is the one that's numbered out of 70. This is the black. Pretty sweet. And another Ichiro. It's Ichiro Chrome from the same set, second series. Another Sapphire card. This is 2019. Pretty sweet card there. Another Sapphire 2020. Not the best Topps design. It's also kind of a boring image of Pujols, but completes my Sapphire run. Here is 2020 Topps Heritage Chrome Pujols. Need to get the refractor of that one. And we got 21 Heritage, two different Pujols. We got the Angels in Series 1. We got the Dodgers in Series 2. We got 21 Sapphire. We got 21 Topps Chrome. I think this is the Magenta Speckle refractor out of 350. Kind of a fun looking card. We got 21 Sapphire Update with the Dodgers. We got 22, or is this 21? This is 22 Heritage Chrome. I already have the refractor. I just wanted to get the Chrome graded 2 to go with it. That's Pujols. There's a 2022 Sepia refractor of Ohtani that I pulled out of the only Topps Chrome box I've bought in the last couple of years. He's having a hell of a season. Wow. That's a whole other video within itself. From the same release, or not the same release, but the Topps Chrome same year, 2022, the Sapphire, the Dodgers. And we have the Update series with the green, numbered out of 75. Pretty sweet. And the blue. That's the common variation. And we have it becomes 9th on the all-time hit list. Got the blue. Kind of looking for some of the other color ones too, but not at the moment. And the gold. All right, so I'm going to be probably slowing down a little bit just with the Chrome submission and some other recent purchases. I just want to kind of slow down a little bit as we go into October, because I will be going to a card show, the big card show here in November. And I might be stopping by some other local things that are kind of happening. So I'll probably be doing in-person purchases if I do anything. Holding off on online stuff and eBay. And I hope to maybe do one more SGC submission before the end of the year. And I want to get some of my vintage stuff graded. Yeah, that might be kind of fun to do that before the close of the calendar year. But that's where we're at. Hope you thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to my final rant on the White Sox for the year. Unless they do something completely stupid in the offseason, which is completely possible. They have it within their capacity to do something stupid a lot recently. But I'd like to think that maybe people are starting to listen in the organization. We'll see how it goes. So All right, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the first week of the playoffs. I'll be back soon, hopefully by next weekend. I also want to say check out my Instagram page too, because I've been starting to put up some pictures there, some cards that I've shown on the channels throughout the years with some of the memorabilia that I have too. If I think it's something that could be worth a video, I'll bring it here on YouTube. But thought it might just kind of be fun to put it on there in the meantime. And that's also I've been showing some of my recent acquisitions before I bring them here. So sometimes they're posted on Instagram before I actually do a video on it. So, all right, well, take care.